In the realm of English grammar, understanding the concept of voice is crucial for effective communication. Voice refers to the relationship between the subject and the action in a sentence. Active voice is the most common form, where the subject performs the action denoted by the verb. The structure of an active voice sentence typically follows a subject-verb-object order. For instance, the dog chased the ball is an active voice sentence because the subject, the dog, performs the action, chased, on the object, the ball. Active voice is generally preferred in writing as it is direct, concise, and vigorous. It clearly shows who is performing the action, making your sentences more impactful and engaging. By mastering the active voice, you can enhance the clarity and directness of your writing, effectively conveying your message to the reader. Let's illustrate the concept of active voice with a simple example. Consider the sentence, "The chef prepared a delicious meal." In this sentence, the chef is the subject who is performing the action, prepared is the verb or the action itself, and a delicious meal is the object that receives the action. The sentence structure clearly shows the subject performing the action, making it a straightforward example of active voice. This directness is a hallmark of active voice, making sentences easier to understand and follow. Active voice is generally preferred in writing as it is more direct, concise, and vigorous. By using active voice, you can create clear and impactful sentences that effectively convey your message. In contrast to active voice, passive voice is used when the focus is on the action being performed rather than the doer of the action. In passive voice, the subject of the sentence receives the action instead of performing it. The structure of a passive voice sentence is different from that of an active voice sentence. It typically follows the pattern object plus auxiliary verb, be, plus past participle, plus by plus agent. The agent refers to the doer of the action and is often omitted in passive sentences. For instance, "The meal was prepared by the chef" is a passive voice sentence. Here, the focus is on the action, prepared, being done to the object, the meal, while the doer of the action, the chef, is mentioned later or even omitted. Understanding the structure and function of passive voice is essential for recognizing it in sentences and knowing when to use it appropriately in your own writing. To solidify our understanding of passive voice, let's examine another example. Consider the sentence, "The cake was baked by my grandmother." In this sentence, the cake is the subject, but it is not performing the action. Instead, it is the recipient of the action, baked. The verb "was baked" is in the passive voice, indicating that the subject is being acted upon. "By my grandmother" is the agent phrase, mentioning the doer of the action. However, it's important to note that the agent phrase is often omitted in passive sentences, shifting the focus solely to the action and the recipient of the action. Passive voice is often used when the doer of the action is unknown, unimportant, or obvious from the context. By recognizing the structure and function of passive voice, you can effectively analyze and use it in your writing. Section 5. The transformation, active to passive. Converting sentences from active to passive voice involves a specific set of rules that govern the rearrangement of sentence elements. Understanding these rules is crucial for accurately transforming sentences and retaining their meaning. Rule 1. The object of the active sentence becomes the subject of the passive sentence. For example, "The cat chased the mouse," active, becomes "The mouse was chased by the cat," passive. Rule 2. The active verb transforms into a passive form using a form of be plus the past participle of the main verb. For instance, "He writes a letter," active, becomes "A letter is written by him," passive. Rule 3. The subject of the active sentence becomes the agent in the passive sentence, often introduced by. As in, "The artist painted a masterpiece," active becomes "A masterpiece was painted by the artist," passive. By mastering these rules, you can confidently convert active voice sentences to passive voice, expanding your grammatical skills and enhancing your writing flexibility. Section 6. Identifying the key players, subject, verb, object. Before diving into the conversion process, let's first identify the key components of an active voice sentence: the subject, the verb, and the object. Recognizing these elements is fundamental for accurately converting sentences between active and passive voice. The subject is the doer of the action in the sentence. In the sentence, the dog barked at the stranger, the dog is the subject because it performs the action of barking. The verb represents the action being performed. In the same sentence, barked is the verb as it describes the action taken by the subject. The object is the receiver of the action. In our example, the stranger is the object because it is the recipient of the dog's barking. By correctly identifying the subject, verb, and object in an active voice sentence, you lay the groundwork for smoothly converting it into passive voice. Section 7. A step-by-step guide to conversion. Let's break down the process of converting an active voice sentence to a passive one using a step-by-step approach. We'll use the example, the mechanic repaired the car. Step 1. Identify the object of the active sentence. In this case, the object is the car. Step 2. Make the object the subject of the passive sentence. Our sentence now starts with the car. Step 3. Determine the appropriate form of the verb, be based on the tense of the active sentence and the number of the new subject. Since repaired is in the past tense and the car is singular, we use was. Now we have the car was. Step 4. Add the past participle of the main verb from the active sentence. The past participle of repair is repaired. The sentence becomes, the car was repaired. Step 5 and optional. Include the subject of the active sentence as the agent in the passive sentence, introduced by. This gives us the final passive sentence. The car was repaired by the mechanic. Section 8. Navigating tense in active and passive voice. When converting between active and passive voice, it's crucial to maintain tense consistency. This means ensuring that the verb tense in the passive sentence accurately reflects the tense used in the original active sentence. For instance, if the active sentence is in the present simple tense, she eats the apple, the passive sentence should also be in the present simple tense, the apple is eaten by her. Similarly, if the active sentence is in the past perfect tense, they had finished the project, the passive sentence should maintain the same tense, the project had been finished by them. Remember that the form of the verb be in the passive voice changes according to the tense. By paying close attention to tense rules, you can ensure grammatical accuracy and maintain clarity in your writing. Section 9. Mastering active and passive voice, essential tips. While the rules for converting between active and passive voice provide a framework, mastering these grammatical structures requires understanding a few essential tips. Firstly, not all active voice sentences can be converted into passive voice. Sentences with intransitive verbs, verbs that do not take an object, like he sleeps or the bird flew, cannot be transformed into passive voice. Secondly, when deciding whether to use active or passive voice, consider the focus of your sentence and what you want to emphasize. Active voice is generally preferred for its directness and clarity, while passive voice can be useful when the action or the receiver of the action is more important than the doer. Lastly, always prioritize clarity and conciseness in your writing. Whether you choose active or passive voice, ensure that your sentences are easy to understand and effectively convey your intended meaning. Section 10. When and why to utilize passive voice. While active voice is generally preferred in writing, passive voice serves specific purposes and can be highly effective in certain contexts. One common use of passive voice is when the doer of the action is unknown, unimportant, or obvious from the context. For example, the experiment was conducted in a controlled environment focuses on the experiment rather than the researchers. Passive voice is also frequently used in scientific writing and formal reports to emphasize objectivity and neutrality. For instance, the data was analyzed using statistical software avoids attributing the analysis to specific individuals. Moreover, passive voice can be employed for stylistic purposes, such as creating a more formal tone or shifting the emphasis in a sentence. By understanding the appropriate context for using passive voice, you can leverage this grammatical structure to enhance your writing style and achieve specific effects in your communication.